Okay, so let's jump into a really fascinating comparison between two jobs that, on the surface, could not be more different: the street smart taxi driver and the high tech Chief Information Security Officer, or CSIO. I know, it sounds like a weird setup, but stick with me because the connection here is actually pretty profound. So, what in the world does a person navigating traffic jammed city streets have in common with an executive who's defending a company's entire digital fortress? Well, answering that question really gets to the core of what being a professional is all about. At first glance, yeah, their worlds are poles apart. You've got the driver, who's dealing with immediate physical risks, other cars, pedestrians, all for one passenger at a time. Then you have the CISO, who's fighting these invisible, ever-changing threats that could affect the entire organization. It's this huge contrast that makes the similarities we're about to find so interesting. To really get this, we need to start on the ground. So let's take a closer look at the day-to-day life of a taxi driver. The job is so much more than just hitting the gas. It's about getting people where they need to go safely and efficiently. It's about optimizing the route, using both technology like GPS and that irreplaceable local know-how. And, of course, keeping the car in good shape. Every single one of these tasks points to one thing: making sure the passenger has a successful journey. And what's really crucial here is the mix of tools they use. A driver has their GPS, for sure, but they combine that with something deeply human: that gut feeling, that intimate knowledge of the city's pulse, and just being able to communicate well. That combination of tech and touch is absolutely key to their success. And this insight from a driver really says it all, doesn't it? This isn't just a reactive job. It's proactive. It's about taking pride in the service, about planning strategically based on data, in this case traffic, and having this relentless focus on what the customer wants. Okay, now let's do a hard pivot to a completely different universe. We're leaving the city streets and heading straight into the digital cloud to see what the CISO's world looks like. The CISO's job is all about high-level strategy. They're not just running around putting out digital fires, they're actually designing the entire fire prevention system for an organization's most valuable data. This means building strategy, planning for worst-case scenarios, navigating this spiderweb of legal rules, and constantly probing for weaknesses. And their tools totally reflect that strategic focus. Instead of a GPS, they have documented plans, policies, and frameworks. But one of their most important tools isn't a document at all. It's the Executive Council. Why? Because a CISO can't succeed alone. Their success really hinges on getting everyone, from the top down, on the same page. A huge part of their toolkit is something called an incident response plan. Just think of it as the CISO's emergency playbook. It's a pre-planned guide for what to do when things go really wrong, making sure the response is fast and organized, not just pure chaos. So, we've looked at two very different professions. Now it's time to bring it all together and pull on that common thread. This is where we see the shared playbooks they're both using, whether they realize it or not. When you strip everything else away, it all boils down to three core ideas: a deep commitment to service, an absolute focus on safety, and the ability to adapt when things get messy. These three pillars support both jobs, no matter how different they seem. Let's break that down. Starting with risk and safety. For the driver, the asset is the passenger, and safety is physical. For the CISO, the asset is data, and safety is digital. But look at their methods. Both are actively navigating hazards, following the rules, and doing preventative maintenance to protect their asset. The underlying principle is exactly the same. Okay, what about being customer-focused? Well, a driver builds trust with a smooth ride and friendly service. A CISO builds trust with the company's leaders and employees by creating a secure digital space and being open about how they're keeping it safe. In both situations, the goal is to make the customer, whether it's a passenger or a stakeholder, feel confident and secure. And of course, what happens when things go sideways? The challenges for both are unpredictable. A sudden highway closure, a brand new cyber threat. The response requires the exact same skill: adaptability. The driver makes fast, tactical decisions right there on the spot. The CISO executes a pre-planned, strategic response, but both have to think on their feet to keep things moving. In fact, if you look at their crisis response, it's basically the same three steps. First, you assess the situation. Oh no, a traffic jam. Uh-oh, a security alert. Second, you act decisively. Find a new route, isolate the infected system. And third, you communicate. Let the passenger know there's a delay, update the leadership team. Assess, act, communicate. It's a universal playbook. So, what's the big picture here? When we zoom out from this whole comparison, what's the one lesson we should all take away from this? The main idea is actually simple, but it's incredibly powerful. The skills that really drive success, they're universal. They aren't locked into one industry or one piece of technology. They're fundamentally human. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter if your business card says taxi driver or chief information security officer. Real success is defined by how well you can execute on those core ideas. Managing risk, serving your customer, and solving problems when the pressure's on. Those skills are timeless. And that just leaves us with one final question to think about. I want you to look past your own job title, past the daily checklist of tasks. What are the hidden universal skills, the service, the safety, the adaptability that really define what it means to be great at what you do?